So let's go on. So we want to make changes that have a positive effect on the goal. And to make changes, you've got to have free capacity. This is a place where we start to differ from what I call the cost world, because it means that you have to have inefficiency. Now, in order to meet the goal, it's absolutely not just important, it's required that we have some capacity to make the changes that make the improvements, right? So we have to maintain some excess capacity or some surplus capacity or some protective capacity, and those are all different things. Protective capacity protects in case demand is a little bit higher today than it was in a different day, just because of random fluctuations in demand. That's protective capacity. Surplus capacity is capacity that we never need beyond that point. But that surplus capacity can sure be used to make things better, to make improvements. And so that is exactly what we should do with our surplus capacity. It could be reading, could be investigating something new, could be learning something, having a better understanding or something so that we can be more incisive in our work. So it helps if before we improve the goal, if our processes are stable. So we want to have not so many fires that we have to stop what we're doing and can't get our work done because we're busy patting out the flames that are all around our desk. So this is Edwards Deming, so having stable and reliable processes that produce outcomes that are reasonably expectable. And then the last part is to implement the changes, you've got to focus, which means stop doing everything and do the something that makes the most difference. So this leads us to, where would you focus? How do you know? And by the way, when Ellie Goldratt wrote his introduction to the TOC handbook, which is a great big thick, 600-page book that explains everything TOC. It's a hell of a compilation of all the different TOC experts around the world. When he wrote it, he said, if I could just get it down to a sentence or so, I'd feel pretty good. But instead, I went down to one word, and that for TOC is about focus. So this last element on this screen is really, really important. The question is where? That's why we have this notion of a constraint. I once posted on LinkedIn on a theory of constraints site, what is the definition of constraint? And we had a debate. It went on for 600 posts. Wow. You would think that a guy that's in the theory of constraints world would have a definition of constraint, but I used to ask Ellie and his son Rami Goldratt, give me the definition of constraint, and they didn't want to do it. And so I took that into my hand and said, okay, we're going to figure this out. And we ended up with two different camps. One camp says a constraint is anything that holds a company back. That's a nice, simple definition. My definition, which is full of all kind of egg-headed words, so I apologize for that, but it's a continuously variable impediment to a system's holistic value stream flow. So let me go into my terminology, just make sure we're clear on what the hell he means. So when I say continuously variable, I mean outputs vary steadily, giving incremental changes in inputs through the constraint. So if the constraint's holding you back the most, and it's the restriction, if you make it 1% bigger, you get 1% more flow. You make it 7% bigger, you get 7% more flow. That's what I mean by continuously variable. So what types of things are constraints to the other definition I mentioned, that anything that holds me back? Well, I could be held back by being stupid. I could decide that this is my constraint, but it really isn't. That's my constraint. And that is an error. I don't think of that as a constraint because it's not infinitely and continuously variable. So what I'm getting at here is that is just an error. It's just a mistake. It's not a constraint. The system, that constraint doesn't exist in the system. It's not a characteristic of the system. It is something wrong in here. And human beings make more trouble in here than certainly any other species on the planet, that's for sure. But all these conflicts and things like that are things we cooked up, things that we decided were conflicts. They aren't necessarily real conflicts. They're not really constraints. Not something that physically holds us back. It's something that intellectually holds us back. And just bad assumptions can lead to bad conclusions. And those are, I call them levers or obstacles, but they aren't constraints to my definition. So just to be clear, I want to make sure I'm saying what a constraint is from my terminology. Does it matter if you have the other one? It's anything that holds me back? It doesn't really matter. It makes you a little bit, on the next slide, you'll have a little bit of problem, but it's not a big deal. So I talked about the system. Everybody knows what a system is, but what's holistic mean? So holistic simply means thinking about the whole system, not some part of the system. So we don't say that accounting has a constraint and customer service has a constraint and marketing has a constraint. We say the company has a constraint and it's in marketing.
Right.
All right, and then the last one is value stream flow. What the hell is he talking about now? Value stream flow is just the flow of goods and services that go out to our customers, and this is what they send us the money. So we got value stream flow going this way, money coming back from the customers that way in any for-profit business.